Have you ever felt like your life was being decided by someone else, without your voice even being considered? Because that's exactly what happened to me. It didn't come like a storm. No shouting, no arguments, no slammed doors. It came gently, quietly, like fog rolling in through the window, soft but relentless. One day I was just a mother, a neighbor, a friend, and before I knew it, I had become someone who stayed inside, someone who waited, someone who watched life happen through the walls. I live with my son now. It was supposed to be a comfort, a blessing in my later years. But, slowly, piece by piece, the world I had built for myself began to disappear. It started with small things. Mom, I think you should rest today. No need to go out. I can handle the groceries. Why don't you let people call me instead of you? At first, it felt like love. Maybe it even was, but love, when it stops listening, starts to hurt. I used to have my own rhythm. Mornings, chatting with my neighbor, while we watered the plants. Sundays, with my church group. A cup of tea with my oldest friend on Tuesdays. Those little rituals weren't just routines, they were my connection to who I am, to who I was. And then came the excuses. That friend talks too much. You get tired after seeing her. It's better not to have too many visitors. Mom, it gets confusing. People don't understand how fragile you've become. Fragile. That word stuck with me. I never felt fragile. I felt lonely. I felt dismissed. I felt like my choices were no longer mine to make. You see, there's a kind of silence that doesn't come from being alone. It comes from being surrounded by people who speak over you, who decide for you, who believe they know what's best, even when you're still here, breathing, thinking, remembering. There's nothing louder than that silence. You already know this if you've lived it. If someone ever called it care when really it was control. If you ever smiled and nodded while inside you were screaming, I want to choose for myself. If you ever felt that your comfort became someone else's decision, not your own. Sometimes I wonder if he even notices. My son. I know he loves me. I know he wants what's best. But in the name of protecting me, he's taken away the very things that made me feel alive. And I wonder, am I being ungrateful for feeling this way? Or am I simply human? If this stirs something in you, even a little, stay with me, because what I'm going to share might sound familiar. You may see yourself in these words, or someone you love. And maybe, just maybe, you'll find the courage to speak about it too. Now, I want to go even deeper into this story. Sometimes, I sit by the window and wonder what my life would look like if I had spoken up earlier. If I had said, no, I want to go, or, yes, she's my friend and I'd like to see her. But when you're told enough times that something is for your own good, you begin to question your instincts. You begin to shrink, not because you've changed inside, but because someone else has decided the limits of your world. It's not that I don't appreciate the roof over my head, or the warm meals, or the so-called safety, but appreciation and autonomy are not the same thing. I didn't stop being a woman the day I turned 70. I didn't forget who I was just because my bones ache a little more now. I still have a voice. I still have longings, and I still need connection, not just protection. I know I'm not the only one who feels this way. I know there are other mothers, grandmothers, and maybe even fathers, sitting in quiet rooms, wondering if anyone truly sees them anymore. If this story touches a part of your own journey, or reminds you of someone you love, I'd really love to hear from you. Share in the comments what resonated most, or what this made you feel. Your story matters, too. And when we speak up, even in small ways, we help others feel less alone. If this conversation feels important to you, go ahead and tap the like button. It helps more people find this kind of heartfelt content. And if you're someone who wants to keep exploring these stories, these truths that are so often left in the shadows, I'd be honored to have you here. Subscribing means you'll be part of this journey with me. And believe me, there's still so much to say. Now, I want to go even deeper into this experience. At first, it didn't seem like much. It started with small, seemingly harmless suggestions. Maybe don't go to church this week. Mom, you looked tired yesterday. Or, I think you should skip the neighborhood lunch. You never know who's bringing what food. The tone was always wrapped in concern, polite, protective, thoughtful even. And so, I nodded, I agreed, I stayed home. Then came the gentle redirections. That friend of yours from the bingo group, I don't trust her much. Or, Do we really need visitors today? The house is finally quiet. Slowly, the rhythm of my life began to change, not because I wanted it to, but because someone else had taken it upon themselves to redesign it. They called it care, but what I felt was distance. What I lived was disconnection. It's a strange thing, the way love can be used as a reason to erase. Not in loud, aggressive ways, but in the soft, silent rearranging of a person's world until there's barely any of it left. I used to walk to the corner market on my own, not because I needed to, but because I liked the air. I liked the walk. I liked being part of something. Now, if I so much as mention it, he'll say, "What if you fall? Or you don't need to go. I already bought everything." And just like that, a simple pleasure becomes another door closed. This kind of isolation doesn't announce itself. It creeps in like fog, slow, quiet, hard to fight because you can't point to exactly where it began. It hides behind good intentions, and sometimes I catch myself defending it, too. He just wants what's best for me. He's busy. It's okay if we don't have visitors. But inside, a quiet ache grows. The ache of not being needed. The ache of not being part of my own days anymore. When you start to lose the little choices, who to see, when to go out, what to wear, you begin to lose a part of your identity. And when you express it, when you say, "I miss my old routine," people smile kindly and respond, "But now you can rest." As if rest was the same thing as peace. As if absence was the same thing as safety. That's the truth. Few want to admit that in the name of love, we sometimes steal from each other the very things that made life feel full. I still remember the first time I realized I hadn't laughed with a friend in months. Not because they disappeared, but because they stopped being welcome. The door wasn't slammed shut. It was just, no longer opened. And when I asked about it, I heard, "It's just better this way. Less stress, less mess." But what they really meant was, less me, less of my voice, less of my presence, less of my choices. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because the layers of this kind of emotional isolation go far beyond canceled plans and empty phone calls. They touch on dignity, autonomy, and the very sense of belonging. It's not just about being alone, it's about being removed, bit by bit. And the most painful part is that it often comes from the people we love the most. Comment below. This makes sense to me, if this excerpt resonated with your heart. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because something inside me shifted the day I realized I had stopped reaching out. Not because I didn't want to, but because I'd been gently, repeatedly convinced that it was for the best, that talking on the phone was too tiring, that seeing my friends might overwhelm me, that visitors could disrupt the peace of the house. And so, little by little, I stopped. At first I told myself it was temporary, that I was just giving myself space, that maybe they were right. Maybe I did need more rest. But rest became silence. Silence became isolation. And isolation turned into something much heavier than I was prepared to carry. I wasn't just staying home, I was disappearing from the life I had spent decades building. The calls became fewer. Not because people didn't love me, but because they didn't feel welcome anymore. I used to enjoy making tea and setting the table for a chat. But now, every time I suggested inviting someone over, the look on his face would say it all, a mix of concern and resistance. "They bring too much noise. It's not good for your nerves. It's too much work." And eventually, I stopped suggesting it. Even when the phone rang, I hesitated. Not because I didn't want to answer, but because I had absorbed the idea that it might stress me out, that somehow, conversation had become a risk. The joy needed to be filtered. That connection was a disruption, not a gift. And the worst part, I started to believe it. That's how control sneaks in, not through shouting or locking doors, but through a soft, constant suggestion that you are no longer capable of choosing what's best for yourself. This kind of emotional imprisonment is tricky, because on the outside, it looks like love, it looks like care, but on the inside, it feels like a cage, a well-decorated, well-meaning, suffocating cage. I didn't even notice the bars being built until I realized I hadn't hugged a friend in months, until I felt awkward picking up the phone, until my days felt like echoes instead of moments. There was a time when my house was filled with laughter, visitors, movement, when I belonged to a circle of women who shared stories and cried over memories and held each other through life's aches. I miss that. I miss being part of something bigger than myself. Now, the days blur, and while I'm told I'm being protected, what I feel is something much closer to being erased. I'm not saying the love isn't there. I know it is. But love, when mixed with fear and control, can lose its shape. It stops empowering and starts limiting. And what hurts most is knowing that this didn't happen all at once. It came in waves, disguised as care, dressed in good intentions. But every "it's better this way" chipped away at my sense of self. And I think that's the truth. So many aging parents live quietly. We're told we're being looked after, but deep inside, we know we're being managed. The difference may seem small from the outside, but from here, where I sit now, it's the difference between feeling alive and simply existing. Write in the comments, "I'm on this journey too," if this touched on something you've experienced or seen firsthand. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because there's something about silence that people don't understand until they've lived inside it. It's not just the absence of noise, it's the absence of being seen. When a day passes without your name being called, without a question being asked, without laughter filling a room you're in, that day feels longer than it should, empty in ways you can't explain. The kind of emptiness that wraps around your chest and makes it hard to breathe, even when the house is still. I used to wake up with a sense of purpose. Small things, coffee with a neighbor, folding laundry while chatting on the phone, listening to someone's stories and sharing mine. But now, the days begin and end with the same cold stillness. There are fewer reasons to put on nice clothes, fewer faces to smile at, fewer voices that make my heart lift. And when no one asks how you're doing, eventually you stop asking yourself to. There's a routine now, yes, but it's a flat one. It's a pattern of repetition that doesn't comfort, it numbs. Breakfast, in silence. A walk around the house, not because I want to, but because it fills the time. Watching the window more than the TV, just in case someone breaks the stillness. Sometimes I hum to myself, just to remember what sound feels like in my mouth. You know, connection doesn't have to be loud or grand. It's the small exchanges that keep us whole. A look, "Hey, how was your day?" A hand reaching for yours without needing a reason. Those things kept me grounded, kept me human. Without them, I feel like I'm dissolving into the background of my own story. Like I'm fading into a version of myself that no one really remembers anymore. And the loneliness, it's not dramatic. It's not crying at the window or begging for attention. No, it's much quieter than that. It's walking through a day without being missed. It's hearing your voice less and less, until you forget what it used to sound like when it was full of laughter. It's being in a room where you're technically not alone, but still feeling like no one truly sees you. I miss the sound of my own joy. I miss the noise of life. Not just sounds, but meaning, warmth, relevance, the ability to touch someone else's day, and have mine touched in return. Now, even conversations feel functional, not soulful. Did you take your pills? Do you want toast or cereal? It's care, I suppose, but it doesn't make me feel alive. People talk a lot about aging and slowing down, but no one really talks about shrinking. That's what this feels like, a slow, constant shrinking of my world, my voice, my presence. I don't want everything back. I just want enough of myself to feel like I'm still here. Comment below. This makes sense to me. If this feeling of shrinking has ever happened to you or someone you love. And still, whenever I start to feel frustrated or suffocated, there's a whisper inside me that says, "But he only wants what's best for you." It's like a shield my mind throws up before I can even finish my thought. I've repeated that line to myself so many times, it's become almost automatic, an excuse I use to silence my own discomfort. Because to question his choices, to question the walls that have slowly built up around my world, feels like betrayal. As if my desire for connection, for freedom, for a life with meaning, somehow makes me ungrateful. I tell myself, he's just trying to protect me. But when did protection become isolation? When did love start to feel like confinement? It's a complicated feeling. This guilt, it's quiet, subtle. It doesn't shout or scream. It just sits there, disguised as understanding, convincing me that I should be thankful even when my heart is aching for something more. It's the kind of guilt that tells me I don't have the right to want anything beyond the safety he's created. That asking for space, for visits, for laughter around the table again, is selfish. And so, I swallow the words. I downplay the loneliness. I paint on a smile and say, "I'm fine." when he asks if I'm okay. But deep down, a part of me feels like I've lost something precious. Not because he's cruel, not at all, but because somewhere along the way, he stopped seeing me as a person with a life of her own and started seeing me only as someone to be managed, kept, preserved. That loss of freedom didn't come all at once. It came through small, well-meaning decisions that slowly chipped away at the foundation of who I am. And now, even thinking about expressing that pain makes me feel guilty, as if speaking my truth is a burden he shouldn't have to carry. So I sit quietly, trying to convince myself that this silence is love. But I know it's not. There's a truth we don't talk about enough, that even the most loving relationships can unintentionally rob someone of their dignity. That caring for someone doesn't mean making their world smaller. That respect is not just about safety, it's about choice, about voice, about still being seen as someone who matters. I wonder how many other mothers out there feel this same guilt, this quiet shame for wanting more than just safety, for wanting life, connection, laughter, freedom, for wanting to be something other than the old woman who's better off resting. Now I want to go even deeper into this topic, because what's hidden beneath this guilt is something much bigger than personal sorrow. It's a cultural silence that needs to be broken. It's a mindset that deserves to be challenged. And maybe, just maybe, if we speak honestly enough, we can start to change what aging looks like, not just for me, but for all of us. Comment below that guilt lives in me too if this resonates with something you've carried in silence. Sometimes I sit here, in the quiet, and let my mind wander back to the warmth of voices around a table, laughter that filled the kitchen while we cooked, the scent of fresh coffee shared with a friend on a random afternoon. I remember Sunday lunches with my sisters, when we'd bring our own stories to the table, real messy, full of feeling. I remember the small joys, the ones that don't look like much from the outside but meant everything to me, on the inside. A surprise visit from an old neighbor, a walk to the corner store, where I always ran into someone who'd ask how I was doing, not out of obligation, but because they truly wanted to know. Those moments, those tiny, ordinary moments were the rhythm of my life. They reminded me that I belonged somewhere, to something, to someone. They made me feel useful, alive, not just a body in a chair, but a soul in motion. And yet, piece by piece, those moments vanished. Not in some dramatic rupture, but through small, silent edits to my routine. A cancelled lunch here, a discouraged visit there, a suggestion that maybe it's too much for you today, or let's keep things simple. Always said with care, always said with love, and yet always ending the same way, me, alone. What they don't understand is that I didn't lose my energy all at once. I lost my connection, my place, and when the invitations stopped coming, when the phone rang less and less, I started wondering if maybe I had disappeared, not physically, but emotionally, socially. I became a memory in people's minds, while still breathing, a shadow of someone who used to be included. And every time I tried to say, I miss them, I was met with silence or a well-intentioned reminder of how some people are just too much drama. But my friends weren't drama. My sisters weren't a problem. They were my history, my witnesses, the ones who knew my stories because they lived them with me. And cutting them out wasn't about peace, it was about control, about trimming my world down so that it fit someone else's version of what was manageable. I think about the little birthday parties we used to throw, nothing fancy, just cake, coffee, and company. That used to be enough to light up my whole week. Now, my birthday comes and goes like any other day, quiet. No one to tell that silly story I've told every year. No candle to blow. No shared smile to say, I remember when. I didn't just lose my social life. I lost part of my identity, because when you take away someone's ability to show up in the world, you don't just make them lonely, you make them invisible. And invisibility doesn't hurt less, because it came wrapped in good intentions. It still stings. It still hollows out the day. Now, I want to go even deeper into this subject, because there's something powerful in understanding how memory, connection, and freedom shape our sense of self. We're not just aging bodies, we are stories still unfolding. And when those stories get cut off too soon, something sacred is lost. Write this in the comments if it speaks to your heart. I remember who I was and still am. I don't want to be rebellious. I don't want to cause tension, and God knows, I'm not trying to disrespect my son. He's a good man. He's done what he believes is best. But deep down, I carry this quiet ache not for rebellion, not for freedom in the wild sense, but for the dignity of being allowed to exist, as I am, with my own preferences, my rhythms, my voice, my way of belonging in the world. I miss being part of something outside these walls. I miss conversations that weren't filtered through the lens of what's appropriate for someone my age. I miss my name being said by someone who knew me long before I became mom. I don't want to be managed. I want to be met, seen, not just as someone to be protected, but as someone with a beating heart and a living history. My friendships weren't distractions. They were lifelines. My daily routines weren't habits to be corrected. They were expressions of who I am. And now, so much of that has been boxed away in the name of peace, comfort, or what's best for you. But who decides what's best, if not me? There's a truth people don't talk about enough. When you age, it's not just your body that starts to shift, it's your identity. The way people speak to you changes. The way they include or exclude you from decisions. They mean well, but their care can start to feel like quiet dismissal, a slow erasure of your essence. That's the real emotional weight. It's not just that I'm growing older. It's that I'm being pushed gently to the sidelines of my own story. And I get it. From the outside, it looks like help, kindness, structure, but inside, what I feel is this deep longing to be trusted again. To be treated not like a fragile vase on a high shelf, but like a woman who's lived, who's still living, and who deserves to live in her own way. There's a difference between love and control, between support and silencing, between offering help and taking over. I wish there was a space for us to talk about that, the in-between, that fine line where protection becomes imprisonment, where care becomes confusion, because somewhere in that space is where I live now, grateful for the love, aching for the freedom. I don't want to rewrite the rules of my family. I just want to be invited back into the conversation. I want to feel like I'm still part of the decisions that shape my own days. I want to wake up with something to look forward to, something that I chose, not something that was assigned to me. I want to see a familiar face that wasn't scheduled or approved, but simply came because they missed me. We talk a lot about the needs of older people in terms of health and safety, but we don't talk enough about the need to belong, to be included, to be heard without being corrected. That's what I long for most. Not rebellion, just the return of something sacred, the right to still be myself. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because underneath this quiet pain, there's a hidden strength and maybe a path forward, not just for me, but for so many others who feel the same and are just waiting for someone to say it out loud. Write this in the comments if this speaks to your heart. I deserve to belong again. So, if you've made it here with me, if you've walked porches of memory in silence in my shoes, even for a moment, thank you. Thank you for listening, not just with your ears, but with your heart, because that's what I've been longing for more than anything, to be heard in the quiet, to be seen beneath the layers of age and assumption, to be acknowledged not just as someone's mother, but as someone whole, still learning, still needing love, connection, meaning. There are thousands of us living behind curtains drawn by good intentions, mothers whose lives have been rewritten quietly, line by line, until we barely recognize the plot anymore. And yet, somewhere inside, we remember who we were, who we still are. We remember the warmth of laughter with a friend, the joy of a spontaneous visit, the importance of choosing our own rhythm without explanation. That's not rebellion, that's life. And that's why stories like mine need to be told, not for pity, not for drama, but for truth, because the truth has power. It unlocks conversations that have been locked up by shame, silence, or fear of seeming ungrateful. But I believe that gratitude and honesty can live in the same room. I can be thankful for my son's care and still feel the loss of my freedom. I can love my family and still long to be more than the shadow version of who I was. Maybe you're watching this and thinking of your own mother. Or maybe you're a mother yourself, sitting quietly with familiar feelings you've never put into words. Wherever you are in this story, know this: you're not alone. And your experience matters. These are not small aches. They are deep truths carried in silence for far too long. And the more we name them, the more we begin to change the way we care, the way we see, the way we love. So, if this story touched something in your heart, if it made you pause or reflect, I gently ask you to leave a piece of yourself in the comments. Just a word, just a phrase. Let's make this space more than a screen. Let's make it a place of shared understanding. Write this if you feel it too. I also deserve to belong. And if you believe that no mother should be left to fade into silence, your like on this video speaks volumes. It tells the platform this message matters. It helps this truth reach someone else who's been waiting quietly for permission to feel seen. Now, I want to go even deeper into this, because what comes next is not just about the pain but the transformation, the shift that begins when we dare to speak, when we claim not just our memories, but our future. If you're still here with me, thank you. Truly, it means more than I can say. Having someone may listen to this part of my story, this quiet part that's often brushed aside, is already a kind of healing. And if anything I said today resonated with you, if you saw a reflection of someone you know, or even of yourself, I gently invite you to let me know you were here. Just write in the comments, "I'm with you till the end," because it's comforting to know we're not alone in these feelings. And if this conversation touched your heart, consider subscribing to the channel. That way, we can keep walking juntos, sharing stories that matter, that help us understand each other better, especially in this phase of life that so few talk about with honesty and care. Your like on this video is also a quiet way of saying, this message matters. It helps it find someone else out there who needs to hear it too.